So let's talk about the data side of project management and why that is so important. So, what information do you think is really important to track? And what does it feel like when you can't get like a clean picture of what that information is?
Yeah, so I like to keep things as basic as I can when I'm running a project, even really, really complex ones. I think once your project plan hits 1,000 lines, people get lost, no one can find it. So, like, really, really simplifying. So, at your basic level, any certified PMP is going to tell you, well, we have to know what are the tasks that we're doing, what are the phases that the project is organized in, what are some of our key milestones or like the really, really important tasks that are going to determine other things and dependencies. I think that's really the main core data set that moves and changes throughout the course of a project. I would say too, other data in information such as your charter, why are you doing this project, or who's involved, like your stakeholders, all of that is equally important as well. And a lot of that type of data is not necessarily moving and changing at the rapid pace that a task is or isn't changing.
Yeah, those things are the variables because, as we'll talk about too, timelines are shifting. A task is complete. Maybe it's not complete. It's being, shuffled across team members. There's a lot of information that goes there. So let's talk about, speaking of tasks specifically, that percent complete. So understanding where you are at within that task and honestly within that project, it's really one of, dare I say, the most basic metrics, I think, in project management, but it is really hard to capture accurately. What do you think makes that so difficult to do?
I think there's a lot of different things that come into play for that. First and foremost is that people are pretty bad estimators of how long it's going to take them to do something.
Correct.
And so many times people will say that they're, oh, I got started, I'm 50% done. And then the next week they're like, oh, I'm 80% done. And then the next week I'm 81% done. And then 82% done. And then 83% done. And it's like
creeping.
that 80 to 100 mark could take just as long, if not longer, than the first two. So I think what that really boils down to is a lot of times you lay into a task and you don't realize all of the work that's going to be included within it. And I'm not here to point fingers or say that that's a problem. I think good project managers get ahead of that. We help define things really well. But inevitably, no matter how good you are, things pop up. New initiatives hit. Something was easy yesterday but is infinitely more complex today because of things like AI or new regulations, or somebody up there has a great new strategy that we all have to implement starting today, no questions asked, right? So inevitably, there is some amount of, we just never know how long it's really going to take from the beginning. That said, I think too, you can do a lot to help people out by making tasks smaller and more manageable, because the smaller it is, the easier it is to complete. Just the easier it will be for your numbers to be accurate, right? So having one step in a task as opposed to 5 steps in a checklist in one task, right? But at the same time, you want to weigh and balance that, right? I always say that project management is more of an art than a science, because it's not like there's a number. It's not like even your best rule of thumb, your 880 or your 420 rules, where you've got 8 hours of work or 2 weeks of work goes into a task. It doesn't always work that way. It's not always a clean breakdown.
No.
So I think like poor task design can lead to that as well. And then also, I personally, and this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I personally do not think there is much value in saying a task went from, say, 16% to 18% done. I usually only track at the big milestones, so 25, 50, 75, 100. In fact, when I use Excel to do project plans, which I don't do a lot of anymore, but back in the day, I set up lists, and those were the only values you could choose. Because ultimately, like, going from 16 to 18% is just annoying busy work for the person doing the task, for the project manager to ask about it. So I find that 0, 25, 50, 75, 100, those are the big ones. So if you haven't gotten there yet, cool, we're going to leave it at 25 and you let me know when we get to 50. And that, I think, helps decrease some of that busy work feel that can sometimes pop up during projects.
Yeah.